بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين. Well, for those interested in poetry, especially British poetry, and even more specifically, modern British poetry, I'm starting this series on Thomas Hardy, one of the most renowned modern British poets. So today I will begin with his short yet poignant poem, I Look into My Glass. Well, of course, before delving deeply into the poem itself, of course, at first we need to talk a little bit about the poet himself. So, who is Thomas Hardy? So, Thomas Hardy was an influential English novelist and poet. Of course, he started by writing novels, but unfortunately, his novels, or the majority of his novels, were not well received by audience at that time. So he shifted to writing poetry. He was born in June 2nd, 1840, in Dorset, England. So his work was highly influenced by nature and also by his personal experiences, generally speaking, by his marriage and his relationship with his wife Emma, and also other personal experiences like the process of aging. Some of his poems also addresses or critiques the Victorian society. He critiques the rigidity or like those social norms at that time, and the struggles of women, and also he critiques the social or the class division. Thomas Hardy was often called as a pessimistic poet. He died in January 11, 1928. His burial was kinda mysterious. So, in accordance with his wishes, he was cremated and his heart was buried in the churchyard of Stanford, Dorset, near to his first wife Emma. And his ashes were interred in Westminster Abbey's Poets' Corner, recognizing his significant contribution to English literature. Well, moving to the poem, I will read it first. Well, I look into my glass. I look into my glass and view my wasting skin and say, would God it came to pass my heart had shrunk as thin. For then I, under stress by hearts grown cold to me, could lonely wait my endless rest with equanimity. But time, to make me grieve, parts tease, let's part abide, and shakes this fragile frame at eve with throbbings of noontide. Beautiful short poem. Well, before start analyzing the poem from inside, let's talk a little bit. And of course, for those who are into analyzing poems, otherwise you can skip this part. We'll talk about the form, the structure, etc. Well, as you may say, um, the poem consists of three stanzas. Wait. So this is stanza number one, stanza number two, and stanza number three. And each stanza consists of four lines. So the stanza which consists of four lines, we call it quatrain. Quatrain. So this poem consists of three quatrain. Okay. Now let's move to the rhyme scheme. When we say the rhyme scheme, we are referring to the final sound within a line, not the letter, the sound that we hear at the end of the line. So let's define the rhyme scheme of this poem together. I need to branch the charger. Okay. Well, we focus on what we hear at the end of the line, okay? I look into my glass. So it's A, okay? And view my wasting skin. So it's B, it's a new sound. And say, would God it came to pass. So pass rhyme with the glass. As. So it's A again. My heart had shrank as thin. Thin rhymes with skin. So it's B again. Nice. For then I under stress. So it's a new sound. It's C. My heart's grown cold to me. So it's D. Could lonely wait my endless rest. So rest. So it's C again. With equanimity. Me, T. So it's D again. But time to make me grieve. Eve. So it's E. Parts tease, let's part a bite. It's F. And shakes this fragile frame at eve. Eve rhymes with grieve, so it's E again. With throbbings of noontide. I'd abide, so it's F again. So if you may notice, the rhyme scheme is consistent all over the poem. So the first line rhymes with the third line, and the second line rhymes with the fourth line. So this is it for the rhyme scheme of this poem is A B A B C D C D E F E F. Now let's move to the meter. The meter is the arrangement or the pattern of stressed and unstressed syllable within the a line. So let's consider the first line. First of all, the first part to make the scansion of the line is to divide it into syllables. Syllables means vowels, okay? Now the sancha is the vowel, but just to simplify it. So I look, this is our first pattern, into my glass. Haha. We call this foot. So in this case, we have 3 feet, okay? And it's stressed followed by unstressed. Unstressed followed by stressed, pardon. unstressed, followed by stressed. Unstressed, stressed. Unstressed, stressed, pardon. Unstressed, stressed. So when we find unstressed followed by stressed, we call this IAMP. IAMP. The meter is IAMP. Then we count the number of feet. We have 1, 2, 3. So it's iambic 3 meter. Iambic 3 meter. But if we consider the verse number 3, let's divide it together into syllables and say, would God it come to pass? Okay, so always unstressed, stressed and stressed, stressed and stressed, stressed and stressed, stressed. So it's I am, but this time we have 1, 2, 3, 4 feet. In this time it's tetrameter, iambic tetrameter, and it's consistent all over the poem. So the meter of this poem is iambic 3 meter in the first, second, and fourth line, and iambic tetrameter in the third line. So this is it for the meter. Now let's move to another thing. Just I will read the poem or the first stanza for you again and focus with my reading. I look into my glass and view my wasting skin and say, would God it come to pass my heart had shrunk as thin. So if you notice, sometimes I make a pause, sometimes my reading is fast. So, what are the features or the things that control the pace of the poem? Consider the third line and say, would God it come to pass my heart had shrunk as thin, because I didn't find the pause at the end of the line. I didn't stop. I read directly the fourth line, and we call this in poetry enjambment. Enjambment, when the line runs on the next line without a pause. So when we don't find a pause at the end of the line and we directly read the next line, we call this enjambment. It's a how to call it? I forgot it. Just forgot about it. And when let's consider this line, okay? It's perfect example. For then I under stressed. You see, we have pauses in the middle of the line. When we these pauses like forces us to make a pause, to think, to reflect on what the poet said before, to slow the pace of the poem, to contemplate. So this pause, when we have pause within the line, we call it caesura. Caesura. I forgot. I remember what I was trying to remember earlier. It's sound devices. Sound devices. So enjambment and caesura are sound devices that shape or control our rhythm or our pace. So I believe this is it for the form and the structure. Let's move to the explanation of the poem. Okay, let's reread the stanza number one. I look into my glass and view my wasting skin and sigh, would God it came to pass my heart had shrunk as thin. First, let's explain some difficult vocabularies. So, wasting skin, skin that is becoming thinner, weaker, or lost its elasticity. Shrunk, it's the past simple of the verb to shrink, means become smaller in size and volume. So, in this stanza, Hardy looks into the mirror and reflects, contemplates, يتأمل on the impact of aging on his physical appearance. Like he's looking at his wrinkles, shrunken skin, and he bitterly wishes, would God it came to pass my heart had shrunk as thin. He wishes bitterly that his heart could also shrink like his body. Okay, like he's looking into the mirror, he is seeing his wrinkles, his shrunk skin, and he is wishing that his heart also shrank the same as his skin and his physical appearance, generally speaking. Now, stanza number two. For then I, under stress, by hearts grown cold to me, could lonely wait my endless rest with equanimity. So, same thing. Let's explain some difficult vocabularies. So, under stress means not worried or upset. Equanimity means calm or mental stability. Well, in this stanza, uh, as I explained before in the first stanza, he was reflecting on his shrinking skin and wishing that his heart shrank the same as his body. Then he continued um, expressing his sorrow, saying, if that happened, if really my heart shrinks like my body, I won't feel hurt. I won't be worried or upset when people stop caring about me, and I will just wait for my death peacefully. Here, my endless rest mean my death, like it's a euphemism, just a euphemism of the word death. So here, Thomas is saying, if my heart just shrinks as my body, I wouldn't feel hurt or sad about people who are becoming cold or are not caring about me anymore. And here you need to consider the process of aging in Western society. In English society specifically, not in our society, in Arab society, we do care about our elder, we respect them. At the opposite, uh, we respect them more and we consider their feelings, their emotions. But in Western society, it's the opposite. Elderly people, they they are left by their own. So this is it. Now let's move to the third stanza. But time to make me grieve, part steals, let part abide, and shakes this fragile frame at eve with throbbings of noontide. So, abide, grieve means, of course, to make me sad. Abide means remain or stay. Eve is the evening or the time just before night. It can also refer to the final part of something, and in our context is the final part of age, the last years of someone. Throbbing strong beats, and noontide is the noon. Okay, so in this stanza, Hardy describes the cruelty of time. Just consider the word time here. If you notice, time is capitalized. So Thomas Hardy personified time in this stanza. He refers to him as a thief who steals something from him. Okay, so Hardy, like, describing the callousness, the cruelty of time, which takes away youth and vitality, takes away his physical appearance, his strength, his body, while leaving behind vibrant emotions that causes him grief and pain. So this cruel thief stole his physical appearance, but leaves behind his heart strong, allowing him to feel pain and sorrow and grief and sadness. So, this is it. So, this is for the explanation of the poem. The poem was said from a first person narrative perspective. I, my, it's clear all over the poem. The language of the poem was also simple and straightforward. Uh, what else? Yeah, we talked about the language. The tone is highly pessimistic because of the vocabulary that we saw earlier: grief, um, loneliness. Yeah, there are a lot of vocabularies that emphasizes the pessimistic mood within the the poem. The literary devices, we have imagery. Actually, the whole poem is is an imagery. Personification, we talked about time was personified as a thief, emphasizing its relentless nature or the indifference of time. Symbolism, the mirror symbolizes self reflection and confrontation with reality. Alliteration in the third stanza. Alliteration, when we say alliteration, is the repetition of the first consonant sound in successive words within the same line. So, fragile frame, it's an alliteration. Repetition, part, part. And contrast, actually, the whole poem is a contrast, tabad, between the physical change versus the emotional resilience, and Eve versus Noontide. So the themes of the poem, we have the theme of aging. So the poem poignantly addresses the fear and acceptance of aging, portraying it as an inevitable and sometimes painful process. So the inevitability of death, حتمية الموت. Also, we have the theme of identity. So the poet grapples with how aging affects their self-image and sense of worth. Because as someone is aging, as his sense of worth is altered. And also love and loneliness. The yearning for love contrasts with the isolation that can accompany the process of aging. So I believe this is it for this poem. I hope it's gonna be helpful, and I will wait for your feedbacks and comments and your suggestions for the next video. Thank you very much.